Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, and it's time for the patch 16.5 rundown. And for real this time, I'm not going to screw up the audio. I am joined by Tim. Tim, how are you doing?
I was thinking about muting myself and talking, but hopefully you guys can hear me this time.
Nice, that would have been a good prank. All right, so Tim, any high-level thoughts before we get into the changes on where things are at right now or how the patch is going?
High-level thoughts. 16.4, the patch that's just ending, was kind of about the same patch, which is not the worst thing in the world, right? The patch before was pretty stable, pretty good. But now we've had two patches of really 4 cost and now 5 cost dominant strategies. And so this patch, we're taking a really big swing at
reroll?
Opening up their strategies, the main ones being 2 and 3 cost reroll. So you're going to see some pretty heavy shifts there.
Patch.
But we're not just focused on those areas. We're focusing on some of the 5 costs, namely T-Hex, that also you put in a ton of work and you don't really get that cool reward. So those are the things we're focusing on. And then the other big chunk of the patch is going to be a pretty big augment pass of, hey, these augments, not only are they weak, they're just too narrow kind of. They're not exciting to pick. So some more deeper augment work there.
Big buffs to augments.
Sweet. Well, won't keep you waiting. Let's dive right in and jump through the changes. All right, first one. The only unlocked change this time is Silas. And this is an interesting one because you're not going to have to sell Jarvan, Lux, and Garen. Only Jarvan and Garen. But you are going to have to be level 9, and that's going to be the trade-off. So overall, should be easier-ish. But I don't know. The level 9 kind of makes it harder. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like easier or harder. I would say the thing that helps us the most here is consistency, which is it's going to be hard to go 9, but if you go 9 and you really want
Wait, do you need Garen 1
from a Demacia opener or from a Jarvan 2 opener, you can get him. You're not as beholden to the RNG of did I hit Lux and Garen as well? And that consistency lets us bring up his power level, which you're going to see a little bit later of like, hey, he's going to feel like a level 9 champion. He's not going to be balanced around maybe you get him on 8, maybe you get him on 9. You can't get him in Arcanist comps. You can't get him in whatever comps you guys cook up, and that'll give us the consistency to give him power.
Sweet. All right.
Okay, so you need a Garen 2 as well. I mean, this will... Okay, by the way, in some ways, I know this sounds crazy, but in some ways, this still might just be equally hard because sometimes you just don't hit the Jarvan 2. But that's a really big change, and I think Silas has just been underplayed. And this also might make Annie strategies more viable too as well. We'll see.
Cool. On the trait side, Arcanist, the team-wide AP is going down pretty much at all levels. So that basically if you're playing the 2-piece, you're going to get a little less AP. And if you're playing the 4 and the 6, the power should actually be in the Arcanist, not the non-Arcanist. So you can see at the 4 and 6, the Arcanist AP actually goes up by 10%, which is pretty good, but less at the team-wide. Demacia 5 and 7, the armor and MR going down by 5. They've been very, very tanky for a long time. Ishtal, just a couple of mission adjustments here. Play Ishtal for 13 rounds is now 15. That one was a little too good. Remember, it used to be 17, so we're trying the middle here. And then the have less than 30 health reward, that one's going to be lowered a bit, considering there's also ways to cheese it a little bit by like taking out Ishtal for a while and stuff like that. So it just ends up being less beneficial. And then Noxus. Noxus has been kind of the underperforming vertical for a long time, especially compared to Ionia and Demacia. So the 5 and the 7 are getting more bonus attack speed, and the 5-piece is getting more bonus health, so that if you want to run some of those 5 Noxus comps in stage 4, 5, and 6, they'll have a bit more. And finally, Void. Void, if you get the Royal Husk as your 4-piece, it just feels a lot worse than the other option. And so by changing it to % health, this should actually put it on par with the other tank option as well.
Yeah, go running through these. Again, Arcanist is probably one of the few like semi-vertical comps that hasn't been working for a while. It was good in the first patch, but we buffed Annie a couple patches ago, and it still didn't see some success. So we want to hopefully see more of that trait, specifically around the 4-piece, more Annie, more Lux outside of Demacia. Going on to that, Demacia, we kind of only see one variation of Demacia, which is kind of against our goals for the initial set that we set out, which is, hey, you could flex around the 3-piece and the 5-piece, but nowadays everyone is just playing the 7, and if you're really rich on 7 and you can go 9, maybe you drop down to 5. So no 3 Demacia Lux, no 3 Demacia Garen, and we think that's kind of the signal that the trade is a little too strong and the other classes are not as good. Ishtal, more kind of touched on it. These are just very easy quests, kind of taking out the risk of Ishtal, and Ishtal is really, really good right now, so taking that out. Noxus, just like Arcanist, is one of the mid-tier comps that hasn't been succeeding. This is going to help both the carry potential of Otacon and the aura potentials, right? The attack speed is going to mean he stacks up that damage a little bit faster. Because I think a good thing people brought up was just, hey, would I rather play 5 Noxus for an aura, which is HP and damage amp, or 2 Arcanist? And I think in the past, 2 Arcanist was heavily the option. So hopefully that evens it out. And then Void, this is, as Mort mentioned, the one that feels a little bit too weak. And so we bring it up, and it should be a lot better late game.
Wow, these are a lot of changes. So the fact that Arcanist gives team-wide AP, like less team-wide AP, I mean, people weren't really playing 4 and 6 for the team-wide AP, but the 2 is definitely something that was really nice as a splash. You're thinking about how, for example, in Kaisa, right, you play the extra AP, so that way you can play like Rageblade Gunblade and you get the 18 AP, like stuff like that kind of matters over time. So that's definitely a nerf to some of those setups where the 2 Arcanist splash ends up being really valuable. It's also like a nerf to Demacia as well, because it like nerfs the Lux in those situations. And then they're buffing 4 and 6, which, I mean, with the Silas should theoretically be easier to unlock. Who knows if that's actually true in practice. So that should make Arcanist more desirable. Also, it's just a lot of AP. 7 AP is like a lot. So that might make it, if you open up an Arcanist emblem, maybe 4 Arcanist, 6 Arcanist stuff could be a lot better. Hard to say though, because it also could be possible that the problem with Arcanist isn't even necessarily the damage it's dealing, versus some other problems around getting to the board and building a front line around it and like making sure that you're stable until you get to Annie. Demacia, this might look like not that big of a deal, but this is like per rally, right? And so this actually could end up being quite a heavy nerf. So it's one of those things where, I mean, Demacia just becomes a lot less tankier. And they said that they're like not seeing enough people drop out of 7 Demacia. I think they're talking about the general player base. If you're talking about high elo, almost everybody wants to drop out of 7 Demacia late game because you're dropping like Poppy and Shinzao and units that are just not as impactful, because you're replacing them with Shyvana and 5 costs that are good, you know, Fiddlesticks, Zillion, so on and so forth. So that's really common to do, but they're probably just saying in general they see too much static Demacia play. Now, the inverse of that is they're going to see maybe a lot of Noxus play now. I mean, these numbers look impressive. It just looks like a big multiple. Like it goes from 20 to 40 attack speed bonus and 35 to 70. It just looks impressive. I'm not sure if it's, I'm actually not entirely sure if that's actually that good, but it sounds really good. I mean, it just looks, it's like a big number. And then the HP mod, so it gets more HP and attack speed. It's also one of those things where maybe it's one of those things where high rolling it early is going to be really strong. If you get a Noxus emblem of some sort, either through an augment or emblem ensemble, maybe 5 Noxus. Well, actually, how do you even do that? You have to unlock Darius, right? Well, that's probably not going to be as big of a problem. But either way, this looks like really impressive. And I remember last time they did this, didn't they do this like already as well? One patch, and then Noxus was like kind of playable, but then they shifted the meta heavily towards 4 costs, and then it kind of got pushed out. Oh yeah, the Opticon augment might be nasty as well. The one that gives them more scaling stats. Okay, the Ishtal nerfs are justified. There are some people who think Ishtal is too hard to play, but I'm pretty sure Ishtal is very broken at high levels. And this, I actually forgot about this. Have less than 30 HP reward from 400 to 300. I forgot that that's still in the game. You can still just cheese this and unlock this quest sometime during stage 2 and stage 3. And just like keep it saved. You don't even have to play Ishtal and then teching at the last second. The one round that you're going to get less than 30. So this is actually a good nerf because this is just like way too good as a cheese. Still probably going to be something you look for though, because free 300 cash out is still free 300 cash out. And then this was a pretty big buff to Void, just to make sure that it feels like you're not performance gap so much. The difference between Iron Carapace and Royal Husk oftentimes is going to be whether or not Rift Herald can tank reliably in stage 4 and stage 5. So this is very big for 4 Void play.
Let's keep going. 1 costs. There are none. They're all perfectly balanced. All the 1 costs are perfectly balanced. So
yeah,
but none of this patch. 2 costs though, as Tem mentioned, big focus here on 2 costs and 3 costs.
Ash
so
buffs.
2 costs. Aphelios getting a pretty chunky buff here, especially at 3-star. So this will be pretty cool to see.
Yo,
Ash, you're seeing a buff and a nerf number here. This is a buff. Just straight up, let's be clear. This is a buff. Ash will do more damage with her auto attacks, and the arrows are based off that anyway. So it makes her stack a little worse, but overall, if you get like an Ash out of an orb, this should be much more playable. So cool. Graves 3 being a little less of a bait. So Graves 3 gets a buff. And then Orianna has been overperforming a little bit at 1-star and 2-star, so getting a small nerf, but 3-star actually getting a buff if you want to invest in like an Orianna for like reroll or something like that.
Yeah, this is going to be a running theme for the 2 and 3 cost champs, which is getting them to 3-star just isn't worth the opportunity cost compared to the 4 and 5 costs. So you're going to see a lot of the heavier buffs be on that 3-star end. For Aphelios, a lot of the Targon units, pretty good item holders at 1 and 2-star, but when you get to 3-star, was it worth playing this unit? And specifically for them, they don't have traits to power them up. So they're going to get a pretty hefty bump there. Ashe, I think Ashe trend is like right below the bar. But we know that comp can't snowball out of control. We've seen a lot of clips of, hey, my fully stacked Tryndamere beat a 3-star unit, 3-star 4 or 5 cost, which is crazy. So we didn't want to buff that too hard, but we're buffing Ashe, which is a baseline buff to the comp, and you can play Ashe as a better item holder as a transition. Graves, since with that TF buff, we've really only seen people chase 3-star TF. 3-star Graves has kind of fallen off as like not even an option, so we want to add that back. And Orianna, again, after her small nerf to her shield, she didn't really carry her weight as a 3-star unit, but at 1 and 2-star was really good, so focusing on the 3-star there.
Let's break it down. Aphelios 3, there's a build around Aphelios and Bard. This will help that composition a lot. It's like Bard, Aphelios, and you reroll with Nico. Try to go for Nidalee as well. That build might get some legs. Also, Aphelios 1 and 2 is getting buffed, which might make it one of the best openers around Rageblade. If you're trying to look for a good way to get into Yunara lines with AD and Rageblade, that kind of Kraken, i.e. Last Whisper type stuff, Aphelios might be a lot better now. This is a pretty sizable buff. So something to think about, especially if you are one of those people that love clicking things like 2-Trick and Warpath and Birthday Reunion. Getting things like Aphelios 2 can be really high roll now. That's a pretty sizable buff. And then 3-star Aphelios is quite good too. If you can get there, it looks like that buff it's a pretty huge buff. It's more than 10%, which is sizable based off Riot's definition. Usually Riot considers a buff to be large if it's 10%, and this is more than that. So that's a pretty big thing to consider. And there might be more builds around Aphelios we don't even consider. I'm just talking about the ones that exist immediately. There's also Aphelios Bruisers. You played like Aphelios with 6 Bruisers. Maybe there's something like that. The Aphelios Scion stuff. We'll see. Ashe, it's a pretty big buff to buff base AD. I think you've heard this throughout the years as well. Base AD is one of the most impactful things you can buff for a physical damage champion because Ashe, as a quick striker, will be attacking a lot. So yeah, they're nerfing the AD arrow damage. But quite frankly, this AD arrow damage was also always a little bit fake. If you actually looked at the way combat was going, Ashe's auto attacks is what really matters. Why people built Kraken on her so much back when Kraken was still in its prime, and it's not its weird like half gutted state right at this point. But Ashe's base AD, I mean, she sucks, so this is actually justified. And then Graves, it's a 10% buff, right? So it's pretty powerful. I mean, there's not really much to say other than Graves 3 isn't worth it right now, so it makes sense that they're doing a big buff to Graves 3. Might make Bilgewater. You know, I've seen people actually prioritize Twisted Fate 3 still in Bilgewater if they get the setups for it and have good results. So it could end up turning a situation where maybe TF Graves is something to think about. Because now if Graves 3 is good, that might give you a reason to stay and look for Graves 3 quickly. That might encourage you to use Bilgewater in order to get 3-star Bilgewater. Orianna. So Orianna 1 and 2 nerf feels bad. It feels really bad because currently, if you were to evaluate it off of the framework that currently AP comps don't feel that good to play, and Orianna was actually one of the only reasons why you would want to consider around playing around an AP composition like Seraphine Lysandra or Demacia and things like that, because she was very reliable without even needing to high roll a 2-star. You know, at 1-star, if you had a really good setup like, you know, the Seraphim staff, Archangels, or just, you know, Nashor's JG, you could actually be stable around Orianna. And if your frontline was good enough, you can even win streak. And so it felt like one of the only reasons you would ever want to play AP was because you could have a good Orianna setup. So that feels worse. And I'm not sure. I mean, we have to look at the rest of the patch. I'm not sure if AP is getting enough compensation to justify it, especially because it looks like AD is getting even better. Like Aphelios is a better option. Like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be into Aphelios reroll. If you get Quicksilver Kraken, which is good Belveth items, let's say Belveth is still good, you can still put it on these units and get value off of it. But if you're AP and you're stuck in like a situation where item holding is awkward, you have fewer options. That being said, if you do get the openers with Orianna, I have seen like Orianna 1 still do way too much, especially if you're able to get those Water Axiom Archangel setups that just makes it feel like it's very oppressive early. So I understand why they're nerfing it. It just feels bad for the AP players. 3-star Orianna getting a buff, that makes sense because I don't know the last time I saw Orianna 3 do anything. She's got nerfed really heavily from that one patch where she was good. So it makes sense.
But I wanted 2-star was really good, so focusing on the 3-star there.
Then finishing out the 2 costs, Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai is a beast. I think Rek'Sai at 1 and 2-star does a lot of work, can carry things, but have you ever seen a 3-star Rek'Sai? Are they ever really worth pursuing? Not really. Tim already kind of covered this. And then Yasuo. I think Yasuo just is one of those lines that we wanted to be really good with like Yone and stuff like that, but it can from a high roll position, but generally not overall. And so buffing it at every level actually makes Yasuo a little bit more worth itemizing early, makes it more possible to get there, and so should open up that Yasuo Yone line.
Yeah, Rek'Sai is pretty straightforward, just not good enough at 3-star. Yasuo, if you ever try to item hold this guy, he doesn't feel that great. So he's getting a buff across the board. He's a little bit too conditional, talking about the Ionia Pass and the artifacts. Then if we speak about artifacts, we see that, hey, we buffed Trined Ash, we buffed Graves, we buffed Rek'Sai and Yasuo. Don't freak out too much because I know Darkened Scythe was a huge enabler of them. Scythe is going to be hit a little bit for the 3-star scaling so that we can bring up the baseline champions as well.
Sweet.
I wasn't going to say Darkened Scythe, but I was going to say melee reroll looks very good right now if they're buffing all these things. Also, I do want to say one thing. How many people knew that Yasuo spells heals? I thought he was healing because of Slayer, not because of his spell. Okay, second is that someone is... the second thing I want to say is that this patch is going to come out, but there's no regionals on this patch. I believe that the regionals is happening the patch after this. So in terms of a safe patch to experiment with, I think it's okay if .5 is 16.5, they overdo it a little bit on rerolls and then they can scale it back so we can know where it actually is. So I think that's fine. Like they can make reroll really strong and then it's like, okay, well, this is too much. They can dial it back, but at least we understand where that line is. And it's possible that if they buffed all this and it wasn't good enough, they might need more buffs, which is even crazier to think about, but it's possible. So I just want to let that people know that before we continue to proceed forward.
All right, 3 costs. Again, go through these pretty quick here, but Darius buffed at all levels. This guy just still underperforming despite all the...
Yasuo doesn't heal. Oh, they just typoed. It meant to say spell damage. Okay, cool. I was like, since when does Yasuo spell heal? I don't even remember that. Dash, then deal physical damage to adjacent enemies. If it hits one enemy, deal double damage. That's it. Okay.
Bug fixes and everything. Mundo gets a slight buff at 2-star and a really big buff at 3-star. Mundo 3, unfortunately, the heal just taking a lot of time just is really challenging here. Jinx getting another buff. No bugs at least, but
wait, what?
Jinx is getting buffed up to be more worth it, especially at 3-star. LeBlanc, same thing, 3-star buff here for LeBlanc. The combination of Darius, LeBlanc, and Draven now hopefully will make something happen there. And then finally, Leona getting more flat damage reduction here. So there's those.
Yeah, something Mort probably has observed over 20 million sets of TFT is that healing tanks fall off a cliff really, really fast.
Yep.
So this is our attempt of, hey, you're healing, you're going to get taxed later, especially if you're a heal over time like Mundo. We're going to buff that up pretty hard so you can actually compete at 3-star with those 4-cost tanks.
I'm Jinx every game.
Jinx, just a little bit weaker, a little bit slow, just a small bump up. 3-star her was definitely not worth it based off how she worked. LeBlanc, pretty good at 1 and 2-star, but really struggled to kill anything tanky on stage 4 and stage 5. So bumping that up so she can actually eat through that front line and try to win a fight. Leona, just again, similar to Aphelios, chasing her 3-star, you'd hit her on accident and it'd be like, I still want to itemize Taric 2 over her. That shouldn't be a thing, especially with Diana. So that's the first few 3 costs.
And there's going to be more, but we just want to go through all of them. Darius's heal is crazy. His 1-star healing is like the 2-star healing, right? His 2-star healing is like the 3-star healing. They're really scaling him up just to show how bad Darius 3 is. I remember trying Darius multiple times after they buffed him. How many patches in a row have they buffed Darius by now? How many patches in a row have we buffed Darius? I feel like we've buffed him like 4 times now. I think Mortdog last patch was saying if this wasn't enough, then I don't know And I think he wanted to say I give up, but he wasn't going to say that on the patch rundown. But I remember he was like, if this can't help Darius, then I don't know. You know, he was just like but Darius is getting buffed, LeBlanc's getting buffed, Noxus is getting buffed. Surely Noxus can finally get into a good spot. If you guys are playing the patch currently and you've been following along TFT Academy, this is something that is sort of a product of the patch cadence, but we've discovered that Warwick isn't really just a Warwick comp. It's actually more like Jinx. It's actually a Jinx buff, or items are more important than Warwick. And we've discovered that the item prio, if you don't know this by now, hopefully now you know. It's at the end of the patch, but you should be prioritizing Jinx items over Warwick items, and you give him kind of the leftover thing, so to speak, because Jinx is very good. And also Mundo is your good tank until you get there. So this is probably going to make the Warwick line the best 4-cost line because it's already buffing some of their key units. And if you open up a Jinx orb, now your early game should be way smoother if you have the items. Isn't it because Zon is bugged? Oh, are they fixing that? Okay, from what I was told, it wasn't like a bug necessarily. It was just that the text is wrong. I guess that does count as a bug. But either way, the text is not saying what it does do, or it does something that the text doesn't mention, but they just haven't fixed it the entire set, and no one really noticed, so they just like, because Zon wasn't very good for a while, and now it is. Who knows? Maybe they're fixing it.
Yep. Malzahar, my favorite. Little buff at 1 and 2 star, bigger buff at 3 star. Yes, we're aware the double trouble comp exists. It'll be fine. Sejuani, 3-star buff, bigger shield, cool. Vayne, 3-star. We've seen Vayne 3 kind of fall off and not really be a playable thing, so get this back there. And then finally Zoe. Zoe pretty good at 1 and 2 star, but 3-star never really worth it. So pretty big buff to
That's
Zoe
a huge
3.
buff.
Yeah, repeating a lot of the same things from the last slide, which means it's more of a systemic thing now that people have kind of solved set 16, which is chasing these 3-star units, not worth it. They don't hold up in the late game against the 4-cost tanks or the 5-cost carries. So we're really focusing on, hey, we're pushing this pretty hard that Zoe 3 or Vayne 3 or Sej 3 can really hold up definitely on stage 4, and only until stage 5 are you going to be like, okay, maybe I should start adding those legendaries to my board to try and win.
Dude, Double Trouble Malzahar, and before there used to be a Double Trouble Targon build. I mean, maybe that's probably going to come back a little bit. These are some pretty big buffs. The Malzahar buff is very sizable as well. More than 10% buff. I knew it. Mortdog, if you guys don't know, Mortdog's favorite champion is Malzahar. It was only a matter of time. Okay, that's just jokes. But at the same time, Malzahar is not very good. People make fun of players who actually try to flexibly click Malzahar. There's a running joke in my chat whenever we were watching Soju play in tournament, K3 Soju, they're saying, oh, you can tell this is a K3 Soju board because he clicked Malzahar 3 times. I thought that was pretty funny. But it's true. They make fun of people who click on Malzahar. So maybe they won't be laughing anymore. It might look kind of small. Okay, 1 minion damage. But he summons a lot of minions. You look at the end of the fight, he summons a lot of them. Remember, his skills with AP. Targon getting buffs. I don't know if this is enough for Acel. This is... People say, like, oh, this is good for Aurelion Soul. This is 3-star Leona. This is 3-star Zoe. You're not playing for Acel with those kinds of setups. But if you are able to be in a spot to reroll for that, I mean, they're good. Yeah, you have to remember one really key piece to all this. Last patch, they buffed the odds of 3 costs on 7 from 40 to 43%. So it's more likely you're going to hit your 3 stars now on level 7. You have to remember that they changed the odds before this. This is a double buff patch back to back. So it's a really big deal. And you might think, okay, 3%, whatever, not that huge of a deal. But it is. It is when you are in a spot where you're high econ and you have things like, you know, the free rerolls from Bard, the golden tickets, the whatever commerce core type stuff, the situations where you just get a ton of rolls, it's going to add up over time. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Big changes. So Sejuani 3 is actually a really big buff. Sejuani 3 is already really good in some lines already, like Ashe and Tryndamere. There's situations where, like, you know, you couldn't hit Nico 3, so you hit Sejuani 3, and then you look at Sejuani 3, you're like, oh, she's actually pretty good. That actually might be like the way that comp actually caps out now. So you just go Ashe 3, Trin 3, you don't go Nico 3, you go Sejuani 3, and then you just like clear everyone.
Stage 5, you're going to be like, okay, maybe I should start adding those legendaries to my board to try and win.
Yep, cool. All right, 4 costs, not a ton here, but Belveth, I think, is just a little bit above the other 4 costs. In particular, what'll happen with Belveth is once she gets a kill or two, kind of snowballs. And so we're just lowering that so that, like, if you're struggling a little bit, Belveth won't be any weaker.
Another
Nasus
buff?
Snowball fights, she's going to not quite snowball as hard. Nasus, this guy, I want this guy to be, like, the best 4 cost tank because he's supposed to secretly be, like, a 4.5 cost tank. He's just not really there considering how hard he is to get, so buffing him up a bit I think will help. Swain, the most played champion of all of TFT, I think.
Yep.
Would we see it as high as like 4.1, I think?
Dude, that's crazy.
So that being said, we don't want to like nerf him too hard. We want him to be a viable tank. Part of this is just the set design, the way his traits are. We did also nerf 2 Arcanist, as you saw. But we are going to lower his starting mana so that maybe Swain 1 with no items isn't getting his cast. And then finally, Yunara. This one's confusing. I didn't mark it as a buff or nerf, but I think overall it will actually be a nerf, would be my read on it, is because generally if you have AP from any source, not just Titans, I know her best in slot was Titans, but even like 7 Ionia could give AP. The AP scaling is off of the attack speed. So if you had, you know, even just like 2 Arcanist, that attack speed would be higher than 80. So baseline, it'll be a buff in some cases. A lot of cases, it'll be a nerf. She'll do a little bit more damage, but overall, this should make her itemization more intuitive as well.
Yep, running through these with a little bit more detail. Belveth and Swain, kind of the best default line on the patch right now. This is not meant to hit that line too much. It kind of lets us shift power into Aatrox, which is, he's going to get another buff, which we'll see later. Nasus, as Mort said, he should be the best 4 cost tank. Right now, I think he's not bad. He's as good as Garen, which doesn't really make sense for what you have to do to get him. And Swain, as Mort said, a lot of that presence is going to be due to the trait web. So this isn't really going to lower him from like 4 in a game to like 2 a game. But we're also seeing that the comps that have Swain as a main tank and a secondary tank are the best comps in the game. So that unitemized Swain getting hit here, Yunara, I think when I did the math on this, it's about like a 7 to 8% buff on the damage on the AP part, but losing all that AP scaling. And again, Ionia has a lot of AP scaling. A lot of augments have AP scaling. Her itemization had AP scaling. So it's going to be probably a small nerf to her, but not as big if you're going to go that Kraken or AD heavy build.
They're not nerfing Mbessa, but they're nerfing Swain. And this is the one thing that they're taking down from Noxus. That is worth noting, that Noxus is very dependent on Swain. Swain being 40 out of 155 versus 50 out of 145. Part of the reason why Swain is so OP is that you can just put Swain in, have 2 Juggernaut in, and almost like in any circumstances, it almost feels like Swain will guarantee get his stun off. Like he'll guarantee get his cast off, and it feels like you don't have to work very hard for it. And Swain's cast and stun is like a huge fight swing. So this might make it so he doesn't cast it as often. I need to like I need to figure out, I need to like see it for myself, but if that's the case and Swain no longer auto cast, like basically gets the cast even if he's gonna die, that might be a big change in the shift of what people are gonna prioritize. Nasus stats will always look bad. Nasus stats will always look bad because you're always playing it from like a such situation where you get the Azir and you're gonna be losing fights. That means you spiked and you didn't win. And so that naturally biases itself towards having Nasus look bad in the stats. That being said, I kind of agree that like Nasus is not even really outperforming someone like Garen in those scenarios. But Nasus is not, he's not bad. He's a good unit. So this actually might make him very, very good. Maybe like because I think the best 4 cost tank is what, Rift Herald? I think they want Nasus to be somewhere around Rift Herald status. And it's true because sometimes you lose 2 with Shurima, and then you unlock Nasus, you hit Nasus 2, and you lose anyways. I've definitely seen that happen, like a lot. It doesn't feel like Nasus is enough, so that's probably what they're going for. And then Yunara, Mort's talked about this a lot. It's unintuitive for AP to scale her attack speed, so I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things where maybe the AP scaling is really good. So if you give her Giant Slayer, and Giant Slayer gives AD and AP, maybe now Yunara's best in slot is Giant Slayer instead of Titans or whatever. Who knows? It's impossible to say when they rework something like this. So I'll just have to see. Time will tell. But Nasus 2 is already good. Yeah, Nasus 2 is very good. I agree.
But not as big if you're going to go that Kraken or AD heavy build.
Sweet. All right, 5 costs. Aatrox. This guy still doesn't really want Bloodthirster, which was kind of the whole point of the design. So going to keep cranking up that Omnivamp to AD conversion so that if you put those Omnivamp items on him, you get more power.
Oh, geez.
Great.
Oh, geez.
Asol. Asol's pretty close, but the gap between 1-star and 2-star is just a little wide. Don't get me wrong, it should be wide in the sense that 2-starring your 7 cost should feel really good, but just a little too much. So buff at 1-star, nerf at 2. Lucian and Senna, this is technically a buff, but it's a bug fix, which is just if Lucian gets stunned, you won't lose the spell. So that's going to be nice. And then Mel, we're fixing the bug where she was getting progress while she was dead for Radiant items, which was leading to some pretty silly cheeses where you could like put her in the front line and get a bunch of orbs and farm a bunch of Radiant items. But to compensate, we're going to make that Radiant item take 10 less. So...
Yep, Aatrox is something we really want to feel good about. When you hit 2-star Bel'Veth and you hit 2-star Aatrox, you kind of still feel like Bel'Veth is the better and more consistent carry, which doesn't make sense. Aatrox, the gap, as we said, is a little bit too big. Again, he's still going to feel really good at 2-star. This is not going to be
the
a
Leduc tech, dude. They're nerfing Leduc
to that, but hopefully a little bit healthier when you get there, so you have a chance to get him. Lucian, again, just a bug fix. And Mel, there was also a bug here where she would stack on PvE rounds. I think in the patch notes we're going to write that that no longer happens. So she only stacks during player combat now. So again, compensating for 10 is a little bit easier.
I mean, this makes sense. It feels bad that to unlock Aatrox, you have to slam Bloodthirster. Sometimes you slam Bloodthirster and Hand of Justice and it's still not enough to get to Aatrox, and then you finally do it and you realize these items are not good. So this just makes sense. I would actually prefer if Aatrox's best items were that, and then they just like tone down the other damage, so that makes it feel like you can actually itemize Aatrox your reward for it. They're right. The gap between Asol 1 and Asol 2 is massive. The reason why Asol is even still like top of the C tier, and we have it on TFT Academy, is because if you get an Asol spot and you can get to Asol 2, it actually can win out. Disho's talked about it a couple of times. I think everyone knows Asol 2 is actually quite good. But they're just trying to make it so that Asol 1 feels like you can actually do something, but you don't want to keep Asol 2 too strong if it ends up becoming too good. It could be the fact that you just need to buff Asol 1 and not touch Asol 2, but for now it makes sense. And what's important anyways? Okay, what's important anyways is how strong Asol 1 is. Asol 2, they could probably even nerf that spell damage even more, and it's still going to be fine because the ramping of Asol 2 is really strong. So I think it's fine. 480 to 520 is not going to be enough. Really? That's a pretty significant buff, especially with all the, if you can give him AP and crit and damage amp and things like that. It's a lot. Lucian's spell no longer ends early. I mean, I don't know why this sentence isn't green. That's a pretty significant change. If it ends early and he's stunned during the spell, so he can finish casting. It's a nice quality of life thing. That might be a huge buff. Who knows? And then Mel no longer makes progress after Mel dies. Apparently, this is like one of those things that Leduc found out or was sharing. And now Riot Games, once again, trying to invalidate half of Leduc's YouTube library. That's how it worked? Nope, just kidding. And then 225 mana for a rating item. I mean, Mel's not actually that bad right now. And you have to remember they buff Noxus. People are like, okay, first of all, if you think Mel's weak, part of the reason why it's difficult to get Mel is because Mbessa is so contested right now. But if you get to a Mel spot, she also isn't really that bad if you've actually played around her. And they also already buffed Noxus, so I think they're just hesitant to just do another thing where they buff Mel, they buff Darius, they buff Noxus, they buff LeBlanc. And everyone's like, well, this was super obvious. How could you like not, how could you not understand that Noxus was going to be overpowered if you buff Mel? So I think they're just like hesitant. And and here's another kicker. The stats on Mel are not even bad if you end up playing into Mel. All the data suggests that playing Mel right now is fine. So if you laugh because you think Riot should have been buffing Mel, I just think that you probably haven't played enough around Mel or seen good players play around Mel to recognize that she's okay.
Silas, you saw the unlock condition change. He also gets more attack speed, so he can get to his cast quicker. And the Jarvan cast, you know, the one where he puts himself in their backline and makes himself the target and then dies right after, will at least now be more worth it and will do a bunch of damage. So pretty big buff here for Silas in that term.
Dude, what's going on?
Zillion's a good champ, especially if he can start getting some kills and those things start exploding. but he's just not quite the 5 cost we want him to be. So a little extra dot damage, I think, will help. This will also be nice if you're like stuck on some tanks and actually getting to do some damage and you can't get those explosions. And then finally T-Hex. And this is going to look scary if you're like looking at these numbers. You're like, excuse me, you're doubling his spell? Like, what? But the big thing here, and Tim can go in and do a little bit more detail, is basically the first target hit by the beam gonna take a lot more damage, right? This is so that he can burst through things like Rift Herald and Garen and those frontline tanks. But everything after it is going to take a lot less damage. You can see here the fall off went from 35% to 70%. That is a very large fall off. So even the second target hit isn't going to take as much, but this should hopefully allow him to actually be able to kill a tank, actually get back to a second cast, and be a little healthier shape for this beam spell.
Yeah, I'm going to run through the first 2 champs pretty quick so we can talk about T-Hex. Sylas, you see Arcanist buff, Sylas unlock condition, small Swain nerf, so hopefully Arcanists are back. But Sylas, that Jarvan spell was really bad for him. I ran a bunch of fights, and whenever he casted the Garen spell with a luck spell, he looked really good. He cast Jarvan, he would jump in and kill himself. And so this hits it on both axes where it actually does damage now. And 2, he can get out of there faster with his second cast if needed. Zilean, this is a kind of a concept about like default AP lines. They feel a little bit weaker now because your caps in the generic 5 cost space are Annie and Zilean, both of which don't feel like they compare to Kindred and Senna and Lucian, right? Would you rather have those, or would you rather play Zilean? So hopefully evening that out. Then T-Hex, okay. You watch a bunch of T-Hex fights. This guy does one thing. He casts one time. If the cast is bad, you instantly lose the fight.
Yep.
If you cast into a tank, you instantly lose the fight because you never get a second cast and you never kill the tank. So all of his success condition was, can I get a really good cast that kills enough useful units so that my team can live so I can maybe get a second cast? But this whole change is meant to address that, give him more options to win a fight. So 1, he's going to cast more. So you can actually see 2 casts in a fight. This is kind of a concept where if you only cast 1 time a fight, that 1 cast has to literally win the fight for you, which is not very healthy. The mana consumed, he's going to cast the same amount of time, but he's going to cast more often. And that spell damage makes sure, hey, there's another way you can win a fight, which is you go front to back rather than killing the backline first. So we're putting a lot of that power in killing Rift Herald, Garen, your 3-star 3 costs that are going to be on this meta. Because your 2-star legendary with items that's eating another unit should probably be able to kill a unit in its first cast. Yeah, we send this a lot. Looks really scary. He doesn't delete your board in 2 seconds. I'll be very, very shocked. I think I owe somebody a lot of money if that ever happens. But don't be surprised by this number. He should be a lot more functional in a fight.
Nice. Dinosaurs are back, baby.
Okay, so sorry, I got some DMs, so I was just responding to it. Man, what the heck is this T-Hex change? It's so crazy. I feel like T-Hex has just been Frankensteined into something completely unrecognizable from the first one in terms of just the amount of changes that they have. It's like they constantly tweak its mana, its damage, its fall off, it's everything about it. Like the scaling of it with the 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, everything about it. It's just like, it's so crazy. I feel like they probably could do an entire dev learnings article on just T-Hex in itself of like learning about this unit. But it's got to be better, right? What it looks like to me is that this is going to be a tank killer now. So like T-Hex will just be there to try and bust through a tank, and then maybe MF or something in the back will actually be your real carry. Like you just give T-Hex like whatever. Its single target damage is going to be good. But because the spell fall off looks like it's kind of high, like the 30 to 75% fall off means it probably can't AoE backline, so you can't make it your primary carry. Because the problem with something like this is in the late game, if you use all of your damage on just a tank, but you're slow to reload and you're taking single targets out one at a time, you need a duo carry, so you can't just be reliant on T-Hex. There's also the element of T-Hex of how it can get online on stage 3 if you're rerolling for 3-star Piltover or you get a Piltover emblem. So they're probably thinking about that as well. So it's probably going to be strong. My anticipation is T-Hex is going to be strong to unlock early. If you can get it early online, and you can use that to get to either Mining Drill or whatever to maybe get away to 9. And then you eventually transition to just play T-Hex as if it's just like another 5 cost, whatever board. You play T-Hex, Lucian Senna, Shyvana, Swain, Fiddlesticks, Tarek, that kind of that board. And it's less about like the Piltover. I'm not sure if you're supposed to stay in 6 Piltover, though, because I'm not super familiar with the upgrades. Either way, it's they're taking a big swing on it. I like Mordog's face in this. He's like kind of just laughing at the whole explanation, the whole scenario. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Silas, this buff makes sense. And then Zillion. Zillion's already pretty good in Demacia, but that's about it. I mean, I guess you could play Zillion in the 4 Invoker setups, but even if you hit 4 Invoker, you're not like super excited to play Zillion with like Anivia. So maybe this could be a potentially good buff to those AP lines that we talked about, where you can play Zillion, Lissandra. And maybe if Zillion's strong enough as a standalone, you can actually flex a little bit more.
All right, items and artifacts. Thieves Gloves. This is like a buff and a nerf. That's a buff in the sense that you're never going to get Morello and Sunfire anymore, so that's sweet. But some of the stage 4 combinations are going to be a little weaker. We've just seen Thieves Gloves overperform a little bit. This is not going to move the needle a ton. But just calling it out that we did it. Darkened Scythe, Tim already mentioned it a little bit, but more base AD, but less on the slash damage to compensate for a lot of the champions that use it getting buffed. Darkened Staff, less AP, more mana regen, but the proc is actually going to hit a lot harder. We've just seen the proc not be very satisfying or existing. So going from 100 to 300 late game should feel pretty good. And then finally, Flicker Blades. There's some champions it's been kind of overperforming on with and will do really well. Flicker Blade Jinx, for example, I think would have been really scary if we let it ship as is. So Flicker Blades is going to get nerfed back down to 5% per attack.
Makes sense.
Yeah, TG, just small nerf. It's been performing really, really well. Kind of loses their RNG aspect when you put it on fighters. So we're trying to hitting that slightly, but not a huge change. Darkened Scythe, just a shift. As we said, 3-star units get much higher base AD. So that slash does more on them. This is just compensation. So should still be good on like Mbessa and stuff like that. Darkened Staff is kind of the reverse, where the stats were like okay, but the effect, if you ever watched it at any point in the game, did like 50 damage after mitigation, which wasn't cool at all. So even though this says, you're like, oh my god, 300 damage, it'll be mitigated to like 150. So even on a Sona, this isn't going to be like mind-blowing. The Flicker Blades, kind of like the one artifact that's like pushing our preset statement about artifacts right now, which is like it's one of the highest win rate artifacts, one of the most picked, really, really good on Kindred and Senna and a bunch of these champions. It's just needs a small tap down.
Yep. Sweet. All right, then we have augments. Now, there are 3 pages of this, and sorry, Frodan, I know you're doing your review of this rundown.
What?
I'm not going to sit here and read every single one of these.
Oh.
You're going to have to do that for your audience. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But overall, like I said, we did a lot of augment passes here. You can see a lot of notes. I'll leave the page up for a bit, but while I do that, Tim, are there any you think are worth covering here?
Yeah, it's more in my PC.
On this first page, I'll go over the general like buff idea. We're just going to nerf the augments that are really out of line. Of course, I think we'll see a couple of them later. But for the buffs, it's not just about buffing something that's weak and just changing the number. A lot of these augments, you see them and you're like, well, I would pick that if I was in the perfect spot and it'd be fine. So a lot of times you're not in that perfect spot, so you instantly disregard it and it becomes a dead choice. So you see kind of more mechanic changes here than you would normally see. I think an exciting one is aura farming going to 4-2. That should be just fun.
4-2.
Yeah, so, people who like to gamble. Big Friend and Component Heist
That's me.
are kind of like, hey, how can we get people on board on this augment a little bit better, which is Big Friend, I'm only clicking if I can actually have a Warmogs or a 3-star unit. But now, hey, I get a little bit of a pathway there. Component Heist says, okay, if I live this round, I get an okay reward, right? It works for Golden Egg because we're giving you a huge amount of stuff. But Component Heist is just 2 more components than Buried Treasure. So a little bit of a kickstart. The Crown's Will, for Crown's Will and Spear's Will, the ones that give you an item, we also have Swordsmith and Staffsmith in the game. So when you compare the two, you're just like, what's fun? When am I supposed to take this? And so we think 2 components on these gives you a little bit more creativity and direction, and you get a little bit less stats. But again, the stats here are not going to be like the most compelling thing and don't really give context. Dragon Guard, small nerf. And then Dumbify is another cool one that hopefully will be more exciting to take. We found that with Dumbify, even if it's good, it's really kind of scary and takes a lot of money to rebuild the board. And so we're giving you kind of a kickstart, which is say, hey, you've lost your whole board. Here's a 2-star backliner or a carry, like a fighter, that can use that big dummy you have, build a board around that, and stabilize, so then you can really get into your team a little bit better.
Nice.
Wow.
So kind of
You know what's crazy? Man, all these changes are a lot. So aura farming, we just go through it. Aura farming at 4-2. This is a really big buff. Dissoap is unconvinced that it's going to be good. I am of the belief that 4-2 is really early because it's like before your roll down. So the fact that it can help stabilize and figure out like when you can stop rolling, this actually enables a lot of fast 9 situations in those spots. But Dissoap was telling me that he thinks that aura farming is only good in previous sets because those 5 costs define the compositions. If you remember Twisted Fate with Juggernauts last set, where you played Rageblade with Twisted Fate and you got Noxious Trap and you played all the Juggernauts, or if you played Seraphine with the Bastions, you played full Bastion front line, you played Seraphine in the back. That enabled aura farming single-handedly. There's not that many things where you hit Zillion 2, and all of a sudden you think, I have the comp that can play into it. That being said, they did buff some of the 5 costs, and there's one important thing about aura farming that is not being listed here, is that it gives you an item with the unit as well. So that could be one thing that we're not factoring into calculus, is like, how good is that spike around the unit? They did buff Annie, for example, right? Exactly. So that could be one thing. Arcane Victory, I think that's a justified buff. Ascension, if you don't know, you haven't got the MO, Ascension's overstated. It's very good. 12 seconds is a huge difference from before, so they need to take that down. Ascension's really good for those, Kaisas, for those Yunara comps. Anything that's like a stall Rageblade comp. Band of Bounty, that just makes sense so that you don't get a free win. Best Friends, these things, these just got power crept. That makes sense. Big Friend is power crept. Now against the Giant's Belt, that's nice. That might actually be a pretty good silver now. Like a very good silver, we'll see. Component Heist, now against, okay, good. The buffing that, because that's a prismatic. It says in 4 turns, get 4 components. Giving you an extra component there makes sense. Crash Test Dummy, stun radius is 2 hexes and better at finding larger clumps. I mean, that's just a fact of life. They're reducing the stun duration, though. Okay. I mean, the 2x radius is pretty massive. If it stuns the whole board, that's huge. And then Crown's Will, I like that. I like more item versatility. The fact that Crown's Will exists, and then there's Staffsmith that gives you 2 full AP items or rod items, that contrast is now shifted a little bit more, and now I think this is good. The modularity of these components is good. Dragon Guard's nerf is justified. Earth Axe buff is justified. And then Dumbify. Man, Dumbify being... If Dumbify is good, it could be broken. But either way, that's a nice buff to Silver Destiny. Now, I think you click Silver Destiny, and you're happy with almost any of these. Is Silver Destiny even bad anymore? You can get Dumbify. That's pretty good.
For this page.
Cool. Second page, again, like we got 3 pages to go through here. So again, not going to read them all here. Some buffs, couple nerfs. What's worth covering, Tim?
So here, I think the 3 most exciting ones. Golemify, similar change to Dumbify, but you're going to get a 3 cost here. Hopefully that's more clickable. Hefty rolls. There's kind of a trend with reroll augments on 2-1, where if you take a reroll augment, you're like worse off because the best reroll augments are the ones that give you econ, so you can make 50 as fast as possible and roll. Hefty rolls, I think, is really cool when it gets online, but you just never get the 50 gold. So the first time you ever roll is 3-1, which is not that good.
True.
But if we're gonna buff it, I think pretty heftily for a gold 2-1 augment, prismatic ticket, that interaction we're gonna have to remove for now. We'll see how it performs. Maybe it can come back, but I've gotten to like 1200 HP on this thing. It's kind of crazy. We don't want to balance around 1 augment exactly.
Yep.
Also, Bard's in the game. So like Bard plus prismatic ticket means like insane stuff. Max build, still a little bit too good even after last patch. Pushing it back a little bit, lowering that initial power spike. And then Promise Protection probably has the biggest line here, which is a lot of these edge case bugs now work. A lot of people didn't know that if you stacked multiple Protector's Vows, you don't get more mana, which seems kind of like counterintuitive for an item augment. So that works now. So stack all your vows as possible and have your Swain cast 30 times. Go nuts.
I'm going to do that now. I will absolutely take a screenshot of triple vow Swain and send it to you, Tim. So that's definitely happening.
A lot of these make sense. I mean, hefty rolls is just bad this set, but they're buffing reroll. So maybe next patch, they're buffing reroll. So because they're taking this, hard commit was broken, too much gold. It was gold per stage. I didn't realize. I thought it was just 7 gold initially. Living forward from 9 to 8 turns. Remember, this was 10 at the beginning of the set. So now Living Forge might actually be really appetizing. Max build. I actually personally love the belief that max build just needs to go away this set. But I don't think they will because that's technically someone's it's like a Tactician's Crown winner augment, so I probably feel bad to take away one of the winner's augments. But it's like so broken in a set where you have unlocks because you only need to find you need to find one fewer copy of whatever you get. So it's just led to some pretty unhealthy situations. But yeah, other things make sense. No longer offers loose subscription for the fact that you can't stack promise protection. That makes sense. Yeah, all these make sense.
Yeah, cool. And then we have the last page here. Again, not going to read them all here. Salute to solo leveling. Finally got a nerf. But otherwise, anything worth talking about here?
Spears Wheel, same change. I think Trials of Twilight, I think just following up from last patch, it was really, really good. So Ken hopefully top forward with this. And if he didn't, you can go yell at him. Because this is an insanely good augment. We're lowering the initial power. We're taking away one of the Zenzaos, so it's weaker than the gold augment, but you get a BT and you get those dupes later, so I think it'll feel fine. I think kind of a mechanics thing here, which is Twin Guardians. You're going to get HP, so your units are going to get a little bit chunkier on the HP bar, and those stats just work a little bit better together. Warlord starts with one stack, a little bit easier to get into. And then we stick together. This is a common story that Mort's told me, which is people get Warden, we stick together. The thing that gives you attack speed and offensive stats. Let's go. So now your prismatic augment won't screw you. That's always a good thing to do.
That's big. It's a big change.
I think the only other two I'd want to talk about here is Treasure Hunt. Treasure Hunt was one that, I mean, when it's not reroll heavy, is really, really bad, and it's been in the Monday morning meta report for a while.
Oh wow,
but
we are
now
back.
Hopefully, with some rerolls getting better in conjunction with this buff, this augment should be playable. And then the other one was World Runes. I think World Runes, when it first came out with the new version, I think a lot of people were like, "Wait, this looks OP." It was not OP. It was actually pretty bad.
Yeah, and the stats was
but
terrible.
now, I mean, if you can get to the 3 or was it 4 origins you have to have active? Yeah. If you can get that quick, 6 XP a turn should be good.
That's a lot.
Hopefully this helps it, because I want this augment to be good. I want it to be like get to rise quick. So we'll see. If we have to do more from here, we will. But I'm glad to see this one get a pretty sizable buff.
Mm-hmm. This is a huge buff to a lot of things. I mean, 4 to 6, that's just a lot of EXP, especially when you realize how it snowballs, because you're able to get more, you're able to win more, which helps you get more gold to move to like get more units to make the break. Like it's just like one of those things that just like continue to snowball. So World Runes is pretty nuts. Treasure Hunt, this is per stage. You have to remember. So it's not 2016 the first time. It's 2016 every single stage that you're trying to treasure hunt, which is a really big discount over time. It's 4 gold per stage, which was the giant nerf from hard commit, right? From 7 to 4. And the artifact payout is pretty big. Twilight's OP, that makes sense. Twin Guardians actually is something that people pick now, so it's even better. Silvers actually in general look like they're going to be getting a lot better on average. Warlord's Honor, I don't even remember the last time I clicked this. I hate that Warlord's Honor is offered on 2-1. I feel like that's like the worst part about Warlord's Honor. You see Warlord's Honor, and then other people got like slamming and really good item augments that help them win streak, or 2-trick and they're win streaking forever on like giga crack boards, and I'm just here with Warlord's Honor. I have 0 stacks. Great. So overall, Warlord's Honor in general has been pretty underwhelming. We stick together. I mean, that's a good change. Wood Axiom, sure. Now all the axioms are getting closer and closer. And Spears Will is basically with Crown's Will. I wonder how good Tactician's Kitchen is now that you get 3 rounds and the Tactician's Crown now. It's a pretty big spike as well. So instead of getting it at the beginning of stage 3, you're going to get it after the carousel on stage 2.
Big change. But it goes from 3-1 to like
2-5.
2-6, I think, maybe.
2-5.
2-5.
Yeah. So, okay. And then finally, bug fixes. Not a ton,
we made
unfortunately,
it to the
this
end.
time, but Evolve and Overcome's tooltip has been adjusted to reflect it only triggers on champion takedowns. And Ishtal's end combat with no items on bench quests no longer progresses if the trait is not active.
Huh?
So, just a little bit of an Ishtal manipulation there that you could do. But otherwise, that's it. So, like I said, it's mostly a buff patch, little nerf here and there, but mostly buffs, a lot of augments, things like that hopefully open it up even more. So yeah, that's the patch. And so as always, the patch will come out on Wednesday and should be fun as we start to head into the end of the set. I think there's only 3 more patches after this. Is that right?
Yep, I think there's only 3 more.
So
that's almost over, guys.
It's been hopefully a good set for everybody. So Tim, any closing thoughts?
No, none for me.
All right. Well, cool. Well, again, thank you, everybody. Hopefully you enjoy as we head towards the end of the set and the next set. Good luck to everybody who's competing in various tournaments. Hopefully you make it, and can't wait to see whose championship augment we get to make next at some point. So should be...
That's probably going to be at one point either a little too good or probably not good enough. We'll see. I mean, they got some champion ones really well. They nailed it, but some of them also end up being too busted. This is a huge patch. I kind of thought with 27 minutes, it wasn't gonna, especially when he said Tim was going to be part of this, that it was going to be a smaller patch. But this is a massive patch, at least by what the changes are doing. They're changing unlocks, trades getting reworked here. The 2 and 3 cost buffs. It's going to be a big thing. I would say that Zon is the big winner here. Noxus looks like a big winner, of course, on paper, but like they're buffing what's already good. But that being said, there's some people who think Warwick is a little bit overrated, but maybe he's not going to be overrated anymore. That's going to be something to think about. I think Yunar is still probably going to be pretty good. So that comp's probably still going to... I think Yunar is just going to be like the staple 4 cost of the set. Like it's just always going to be fine. And then the Augment Changes. The Augment Changes have actually some of the biggest impact in general, which is a good thing. I always say that Augment Balance is one of the things that you tackle at last because you need to get all the units and traits in a good spot, and then augments unlock the conditions around it, and that way you don't create as big of a gap. But these are huge augment changes, so they're buffing a lot of the bad ones. This almost makes me feel like there were so many bad augments, which is sort of what my thought process was when I was going through augments last set in set 15. I was actually saying last set in set 15 that I had so many problems with what was going on during the set. I couldn't even get to the point where I wanted to complain about augments. I was saying augment balance was not in a great spot last set. And we couldn't even get to that point because we were busy fixing all the bugs and the power-up stuff and trying to get balance in the right spot. So now we're at that point of the set where we're actually trying to fix the augment balance. That usually is a good sign. That doesn't mean that these augment changes are not going to be giant swings, though. I'm just looking at Dumbify and Golemify, and they look insane. Some of these changes at the Prismatic tier are also pretty crazy as well, so we'll see. But I do want to emphasize that I believe regionals and the World Championship, if you're worried about competitive, not everyone is. A lot of people watching this actually do not care about competitive at all, which is funny because America starts in like 45 minutes. But I believe the patch is played on 16.6. So this at least gives us a little bit of downtime to at least try out some changes. And if they're bad, they're over dialed, just peel it back a little bit. AP is looking like it's Whis. We'll see though. They buffed some of the 3 costs, but they both 3-starred 3 costs, not like the 1 and 2 costs, right? Yeah, it could. I mean, maybe Malzahar will be the savior.